changing filament is pretty straightforward. The one thing to keep in mind is when you turn your printer off and it cools down and it has filament in it, it'll usually create a little teardrop shape at the tip where it goes into the melt zone in the nozzle. And so if you heat the printer up and just do a unload, that larger teardrop shape at the tip of the filament could get stuck in the gears in the extruder, and it'll snap off this piece of plastic in between the extruder and the hot end. And you have to take the whole extruder apart, and it'd be kind of difficult to fix. It's relatively simple fix, but it can be a little bit of a pain to do. So every time you unload a print, I want you to load it first. Just go to your settings and whatever printer. Here we're going to go to our utilities. We're going to go to our filament loading. Your printer might have a few different buttons, but essentially you're going to go to the filament loading. And we're using only the left extruder, so don't even look at the right extruder. So we're going to go to load left. And currently it's at 76 degrees, so we had something printing earlier. So it should heat up fairly quick. So once that starts to extrude, it's going to pull the filament through that it already has. And it'll come through, once you see it start to come through, you can just go ahead and cancel. And if you look at the screen, it says press left to cancel. So as soon as it starts to extrude, I am then going to cancel it and then unload the printer. And at that time, I'm going to make sure that I have my hand on the filament at all times. I never let go of my filament when I'm loading or unloading, because that filament can spring back and gets tangled in on the spool and create knots. So make sure you're always holding on to that filament, whether you're loading or unloading or putting your spool away or taking a spool out. So you can see we're already at 155 degrees. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the nozzle and the filament and how we can take that out and how we can put that filament back in and get a good extrusion without having to break something. So it should just be another moment here. We're at 182 and we want to see like how far that filament comes out. Okay, so we're at 218, 217 out of 222. So we should start extruding here any moment. You hear it get a little louder. The motors will start turning on the extruder. There it goes. And it says begin loading or unloading. Press the center button when finished. So it's kind of like canceling it. And it's already come out about 4 inches or so. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the center button. It's kind of like canceling it. And then now I'm going to hit unload left. Go up and hit OK. And since it's already heated, it should be ready to go. And so make sure you're ready to grab that filament so it doesn't just pop out. And we'll take a look at that in a second. So our extruder on the left has the guide tube going into it, and in that you can see there's the filament. These printers, they come with a spool holder on the back, and then the filament goes up the spool, down this tube, up and down this tube, and then into the extruder. The printers at the studio, we just have the filament spools mounted from above, and the filament just comes in and goes directly down in. There's no guide tubes. So this will look a little different if you're using the printers at the studio. So you can see there's the filament and then there's guide tube. It just kind of sits in there. Some they snap in here. This one just kind of sits a little loose from one of the earlier designs. So you can see, I'm going to go ahead and move the guide tube. If I hold on to it and pinch, you can see my fingers moving. That's the filament moving. And if you look at the bottom, you can see that filament coming out. So once it starts to come out, you can hit OK. And then you can go to unload left. Hold on to that filament. Don't let go of it. Especially in the studio. Here it doesn't matter so much because I've got that guide tube. That guide tube will hold the filament in there, so if it goes anywhere it's no big deal. So you can see my fingers stop moving. So I can feel it's not vibrating anymore, so I can slightly pull, and it should just pop out. There should be no tugging. If you're tugging on something, something's wrong, and something is probably going to break. So make sure you load it so that the filament gets nice and softened up and doesn't get clogged in the nozzle. Then you can unload. So always load first. And then use a little, snippers or little side cutters to get a fresh cut. So cut the end of the filament before you load any new filament. You don't want to put any filament in there that's stringy, pointy, or kind of got a big fat end on it. So cut it off with scissors or the side cutters that came in your kit. So now that we're done unloading, we want to go ahead and load again. So go to your load left, hit OK, put your filament, just kind of place it in the top. Now if it's already heated up, see how it's just grabbing it and pulling it down there? If it's already heated up, then it's just going to go in there no problem and start extruding. You might have to wait for it to heat up though. And then just let it keep pulling through. I can kind of feel this vibrating a little bit, like the filament's running through. You'll see there's the green. And let's say I was putting a different color. You want to wait till that other color comes through, which will take probably right until about now. And then that new color coming through should be that pure color. So then at that time, you can go ahead, hit OK. And so you're going to be really tempted to grab that string and pull it off. One, it's going to be hot, you might burn yourself, and two, you're going to create this big spider web stringy kind of piece of plastic. So just let it cool, and as soon as you stop loading, it'll cool off, and it'll take just a minute or something. Once that hardens up, then you can just break it off or put it to the side, or when it heats up the next time someone's going to print, is fine too. Just don't leave a big stringer kind of hanging there, and don't pull it off while it's super hot.